Good morning. Sunday morning, just before 9 o'clock. A bit overcast, very pleasant temperature though, and it's time to head off. As is now par for the course, just as I untied the ropes and got set to push the boat off, another one came past, so now I'd be following right behind them. We went slowly past the long line of moored boats, as you do, but I did notice that even for canal boating, we were going really slowly. Just listen to my engine. It was as slow as it goes, yet somehow I was still catching up the boat in front. In fact, I kept having to drop into neutral so as to keep my distance, which isn't great because you then lose steering with no prop wash going over the rudder. I thought, having passed the moored boats, we might go a tad faster, but no. Then there were some more, so okay, we'll go slow here too. At least the languid pace did give me a chance to keep an eye out for cats. Look, there's one, a little cat-shaped shadow on the stern of that boat. Right, we're past all the moored boats. Surely time to get out of Tickover and go a tad faster up to the locks at Hillmorton. But apparently not. This was going to be the pace all the way. This was initially puzzling, but I think I'm right in saying this must have been an electric boat, and their owners do tend to go much slower in order to conserve the precious battery power. That's fair enough. I'm not having a go. And I know very well that canal boating is about slowing down, taking your time, blah blah blah. I've been afloat for 10 years, I know this. But this was perishingly slow, and I kept having to drop into neutral to keep pace. I worked out that at this rate the trip to Braunston would take me about 7 hours instead of 4 at a more normal cruising speed. Given that I needed to get back to Brinklow by public transport on a Sunday afternoon, I really didn't want it to take that long. Instead of doing as I did, hanging back politely and getting quietly annoyed, as is the British way, what I should have done would have been to go right up behind this other boat and made it very clear, politely still, that I wanted to come past. I'm just so unused to overtaking on the canals that I couldn't find a spot where I was happy to open the throttle. And of course every now and then we went past more moored boats which you can't speed past. But I had a little wheeze up my sleeve. You see, the locks at Hillmorton are in pairs, so we'd be going up side by side. If I got my skates on, I might be able to get past during the locking, even with the other boat having 2 people aboard and me being solo. The lockkeeper opened the lower gates for both of us, and I steamed in and up, making my exit as the other boat finished rising. This was a good start. Narrowboat racing has never been so exciting, and I belted out towards lock number 2. Of course, I then needed to correctly pick which, if either, of the next pair was the most likely to be empty already, saving me the job and time of doing so. Peering closely at the lock gates, you can see a gap between them, so that lock must be empty. It was also the one with the nearest lock landing, so I made a beeline for it and scurried up to open the gates while still being careful not to fall in as I jumped daringly between them. As I prepared to exit the lock with just one more to go, another boater walked down, so I quizzed him about which of the next pair was most likely set in my favour. By the point where I left lock 2, the electric boat hadn't even got as far as emptying the one beside me, so I had time in hand. With a higher boat descending in the left-hand lock, I chose the right one, but needed to empty it first. Now you might say I should have waited for the higher boat to finish and then gone into that empty lock, but I knew the electric boat behind me could make use of that one, so a lock was going to have to be emptied either way, and I figured I might as well keep my lead. I say lead, but to be fair, the boaters on the electric had no idea we were racing. And incidentally, they were very pleasant people who said hello and so on as we were alongside at bottom lock. Anyway, like a bullet from a gun, like an arrow from a bow, like a canal boat from a lock, I emerged victorious in my quest not to be delayed. In the warm sun, I was now sweating deeply unpleasantly from the pounding of the lock paddles. However, I could now settle back to making good progress at a furious 2.5 miles an hour in the very familiar route from Hillmorton to Braunston. I have never seen a boat use an anchor on the canals before. You generally just tie to the canal side as shown, and there's only soft silt at the bottom anyway. There's a bit of a blind bend here, so I approached slowly. Many moons ago, it was here that I had the engine taken out of my old narrowboat in order to try to find an oil leak. We never did pin it down, unfortunately. Looks like things have changed a bit. Those floating cabins are new. With the July sun beating down, I made every attempt to keep the boat in the shade, which was sometimes easier than others. Is it me, or is that bare tree raising its arms to the sky and dancing in some kind of tree rave? Nothing a bit of gaffer tape can't fix there. You have to be alert coming along Barbie Strait because there is a marina along there, as you can tell, which boats will emerge from occasionally. One of these boats had broken down, the other, his friend, had stopped to help. It made for a little congestion point, so I held back with the two boats coming the other way. Once they'd cleared, I could go through.
You're pushing quite a large branch. Sorry? You're pushing quite a large branch. Push something.
What was I just saying about tying up to the canal side? Actually, not comfortably possible on much of the North Oxford Canal, as it's lined with these sloping rocks which bang against the underside of your hull if you try to stop alongside.
Good morning.
It's good to see you.
Many of these original bridges were built because the canal split farmers' fields in two, but they still needed a way to get their cattle across. It is, as you can see, very rural round here. Here's Dunchurch Pools Marina, the last place that wide-beam craft can get to on the North Oxford Canal, and even then you have to get permission from the CRT to come up this far from Braunston, as technically this is a narrow-beam only canal. They need to know you're coming so they can clear you a path. Canal water is vile, but that doesn't stop the local sheep from slurping it like parched desert beasts at an oasis. You can imagine the ones at the back saying, "Are we nearly there yet? I'm tired." That tiny spire is Braunston Church, just a mile or so distant. Oh really, somebody can't spell petrol. Bridge 89 marks the start of moorings at Braunston, which is one of the key canal villages, where the Grand Union comes up from London towards Birmingham and the North and South Oxford canals split. With so many routes available, it's a good place for a weekend boater like me to moor. Apart from the vegetation, it does also get generally narrower here approaching that road bridge at the end, so you have to go cautiously in case of oncoming traffic. Successfully under the bridge, this working boat is permanently moored here, I think. Just around the corner, a bit of a tight squeeze, with boats moored on the services point sticking out into the canal. I was pretty much at my destination, but with it being a sunny day, reminiscent of the very first day I ever spent on a canal boat, I decided to take my lunch on the stretch between Braunston and Wigram's Turn, which is where I had that narrowboat experience that made me move aboard a boat. As I turned under the famous double bridge, these viewers said hello. Ahead is one of the occasional turnover bridges you find on the canals. These take the towpath from one side to the other and enabled horses pulling the old working boats to cross without needing to be unhitched to go through the bridge. You see how the path goes up from one side, across, and then back down this way before looping under the bridge, and in doing so keeps the horse tied to the boat. If the towpath hadn't looped back under, the rope would have got hung up over the brickwork. There are some very nice private moorings along here. I'd rather like one, so if anyone knows of one coming spare, do let me know. Yes, one of those would do very nicely. That's a proper old-school working boat. Look at the dents in the rear. You never want to be hit by one of these. They're very solid. This is a most glorious stretch. It's about 4 miles of winding, twisting countryside canal with sloping fields to the sides filled with trees, sheep, cows and birds. On a sunny day, there's no finer place to stop and have a picnic. So that's exactly what I did, right here. And just in front of me, I found this wonderful boat selling plants and seeds and such like. I love this aspect of canal life. There are so many wonderful traders on the boats. And here you just take what you fancy and leave the money in the box. I settle down for a sandwich before moving to my mooring. Journey's end after 7 weekends over 3 months. Cheerio.